Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We're almost right on time tonight, 6:02 p.m. start, which by KWM standards is early. So well done us. And I'm just looking here. Did they change things on Zoom? Where is my chat? There we go. They've updated it and moved the buttons around. I had a bit of a Windows update incident about 30 minutes ago that caused me some panic. Seems every time we've got a tasting, my computer needs to update itself. Anyway, nice to see you all. We're going to just give it one more minute to see if any stragglers are there to join us. If you didn't catch the order of the whiskeys tonight, it was in the chat. I am going to put it in the chat so you can see it. Or sorry, it was in the email that was sent out. It might have been put into the waiting room chat, but there you have it. We've got 8 whiskeys tonight. We're starting with Northland, then Aurora, Morven, Langskip, 10-year-old, lightly peated, batch 458, spirit sample, cask 133, and then peated cask strength to wrap things up. So we've got a cool lineup tonight, and we're honored to be joined by Mark Westmorland, who is the brand ambassador for Wolfburn Distillery. Mark, thanks for joining us tonight, or tomorrow in your case.
Yeah, thanks very much, Andrew. An absolute pleasure. Thanks to James as well for the invite. It's one of these things that I do, getting up in the middle of the night to do tastings across the world. If you can't do that, you shouldn't be in the job, So yeah, global brand ambassador. The world is my oyster, as I say.
Nice. Well, and hopefully we'll see you trotting over this way at some point in the future.
Yeah, desperately needed to get over to Canada, do some whiskey festivals, do some activations, and see you find people in the flesh, some flesh as well.
Well, I will say this because I don't know how many people on our tasting tonight have done this, but I've actually been to Wolfburn. It was about seven years ago. My dad's 75th birthday. I took him up to see the Orkneys because my mom's actually from, she's a Gun, her clan from the Caithness area. And we went up to see Ray, where her ancestors were put on a boat to Canada to make way for sheep about 200 years ago. But we popped in while we were over there. So,
oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
That's really good you've made the pilgrimage. I know James is desperate to come up as well. And I always say, make the pilgrimage to Wolfburn, you shall be rewarded. We'll bring out the red carpet for you. It's a small piece of carpet, but we'll bring it out anyway, and you can stand on it and have a bit of fun. But yeah, it's always nice to see people make the effort to come to the far north of Scotland, because we're not just a stone's throw from Glasgow or Edinburgh. We're a 6-hour drive north. There are other ways to get up there, right enough, but we'd love to see you. So if anybody's listening, yeah, this is the bug. This will have my claws in you. You can hopefully, after tonight's tasting, I'll whet your appetite. You'll come over and you'll come and see us.
Absolutely. If there's people who like driving, there's some absolutely stunning drives in that part of Scotland. I know everyone talks about the East Coast, but I actually love, the West Coast. I love that East Coast drive up, towards Wick and then cutting across. It's a beautiful part of Scotland. Yeah,
you've got the Scotland's Route 66, our North Coast 500 as well, from Inverness, 500 miles up the coasts along the North Coast and down either east or west, depending on which way you go. So that's our North Coast 500, and that for us has been a godsend as well, because it's sending a lot of tourists our way. But you're right, the scenery is absolutely stunning. I'll be honest with you, I was born and bred in Thurso. I spent my formative years there, the first 19 years I spent there. So I'm completely biased. I'm hugely passionate about the area, hugely passionate about the distillery, and I get to go on a global stage and bang the drum for Wolfburn. So it's a dream job for me.
Oh, sounds great. I should have added, we're also joined tonight by James Bourne from Authentic Wine and Spirits. who will also be chiming in from time to time here. James will be familiar to many of you who've been part of our tastings before. James has a special connection to this because bringing Wolfburn to authentic, I think, was his personal passion, and it's something that he's been, really working hard to build awareness of the brand. So good to have you there, James. Mark, where do you want to start? Should we dive in and let people have a whiskey, or do you want to give people a bit of background on Wolfburn to start?
I'll get the whiskey in your hand. That's what it's all about. We're at a whiskey tasting. So I always have to say that the glass that I have in front of me isn't a normal size Glencairn glass. I don't have huge giant hands. These are little perfect dram glasses. Now, this is the sort of best way for me to say slange, to say Slanjabad, everybody here, welcome to the Wolfburn tasting. Here's to a great night. This is going to be very conversational, hopefully informative from you. If you have any questions, pop them in the chat. James and Andrew will bring the questions over to me as well. But the more relaxed I am, the more information you'll get from me as well. It's just after 1 o'clock in the morning here in Scotland, so you've got me for the next hour and a half. So let's crack on. Slange. Welcome to the Wolfburn tasting. So.
And hey, Mark, for their next tasting, I don't think you should tell people that it's a wee glass. I think you should just let them assume you're just a giant.
No, my ego isn't that big. I always have to let people know that I'm very humble. Like our whiskey makers, we're very humble. You're not going to see us on the sides of buses or in glossy magazines, at shows and festivals. I'm not the one at the front of the stands throwing skip caps and firing t-shirts out of cannon into the crowd to drum up business at the Wolfburn stand. How we drum up business is this: the juice, the whiskey itself. We concentrate our efforts into making the best that we can, storing it on site and bottling it on site. We have supreme control over our spirit, so that's the way we roll. But yeah, it's great. So if you're cheering us with the first dram on your list, I'll quickly tell you it's the Northland. It was our first ever expression that came out in 2016. I'll tell you a wee bit about the history of the distillery. I'll tell you a wee bit about that's what we do. One. Yeah, that was a test. You threw that up when I was talking earlier on, just to sort of throw me a bit to see if I could cope with a wee wobble at the beginning.
Yeah, that's right. Here we go. Got it. I think I've got it now.
I was the consummate professional. I just looked at it and thought, oh, his big jobby fingers is probably just hit the wrong button there.
I'm just a little slow, actually. That's what it really is.
Not at all. Yeah, so this is our first dram. And again, when people ask me what my favourite Wolfburn is, I always go back and say the Northland. It was our firstborn. Don't tell my other children, but it was really exciting. It was quite scary because it was new. But this is the one that put us on the map, put us under the microscope. A non-peated spirit matured in ex-peated quarter casks. And it came out the traps to world acclaim. It won gold at the San Francisco show. It's still winning gold, actually. It won best non-aged single malt Scotch for the Highlands last year at the World Whisky Awards. Tonight's tasting, yes, I can tell you what I know, I can tell you what I taste. I tend not to do that unless it's needed. However, you will listen to me wax lyrical about the spirit, about what I get. I don't have them in front of me. Cut me, I'll probably bleed the stuff. Please don't cut me. But the great thing about our spirit, it's quite fruity, it's quite floral, it's quite light, it's quite vibrant. And how we do that, that's through the process, and I'll explain what the process is. But yeah, it's a really nice one to get in the glass first off for a tasting. So the original Wolfburn started in 1821. That was our very first Wolfburn distillery in Scotland. We're based in Thurso, Thor's town, on the very, very north of Scotland. We're the most northerly town on the British mainland. And as I said, I was born there. I was born about 1,000 yards from where the distillery is now. But the old distillery lasted for about 30 or 40 years. Then it went into rack and ruin. We tried to do some research. We tried to get some recipes. We tried to get some bottles. Our owners traipsed over the moors to see where the original distillery was, and all that there's left is just the foundation stones. It's funny how you mentioned your family, the Gunn family from the north of Scotland as well. I've got very many friends called Gunn, and just as they were exported, shall we say, during the Highland clearances for the sheep, Caithness, the area that we're in, it's well renowned for its class of stone and slate. And along that north coast from the quarries, the stone and slate was sent across the world because it's very hard wearing. But we couldn't find really much detail about the Wolfburn distillery, apart from some tax records from 1826. It was their largest producer of whisky. It was producing about 125,000 litres per year. And we found some death records, some like voters' roll records as well, about the people that stayed round the distillery or at the distillery. So that just goes to show the only two things certain in life are death and taxes. I'm here all week. I'll get my coat. Thank you very much. But yeah, the old distillery, there was nothing, there was no pictures, there was no recipes. So our owners are ex-military men. They're ex-Royal Marine Commandos, Andrew and Harry. And Andrew grew up from the age of about 8 in the town of Wick, as you mentioned, on the east coast. Wick's the dark side of the county for us. It's them and us sort of thing. We like a wee bit of rivalry. That's the home of Old Pulteney. Again, the maritime malt, that lovely salty sweetness that you get from Old Pulteney, which I like as well. Growing up in Caithness and travelling and working elsewhere, Old Pulteney was the first whisky I always asked for because it was our local whisky. It was our go-to. Always support local. That was the plan. But when Wolfburn came knocking in 2016, asking me if I wanted to help them out on a global stage, I jumped at the chance as well. My history is not in the whisky industry, although I drink plenty of the stuff. Please drink responsibly. I've got to say that every tasting as well. So I sort of approach these tastings from a consumer's point of view. Let's make a memory, and let's have some information. Let's have some quality drams. So basically, welcome to the Canadian Wolf Pack. This is our little fan base now that we have, and we're trying to grow that across the world. How do we do that? Exactly what's in the glass. That's how we want to grow as a brand. That's how we want people to be interested. My job's getting the liquid to the lips. I'm a mere guardian of the spirit as well. So it's really good in that respect.
Mark, I almost forgot, but the timing on this is kind of coincidental. I wrote a column for a Celtic magazine about Wolfburn that is in their current issue. I've just emailed you the link, but brilliant. When you started telling the story, it got me clued into when I was doing some research on the distillery on the background. And when I first visited, I didn't understand that connection to that original distillery that goes back to the 1800s. Yeah. I knew there was a new distillery. And I think partly when I visited too, there wasn't as much of a focus on tourists and visitors because the distillery hadn't released whiskey yet. And so that wasn't kind of provided. Someone basically just showed me around. I got to see the stills and have a look around. But it's fascinating, that connection back. And your other comment about the slate is also interesting because I find there's a nice minerality in this whiskey. Like it has kind of a stony, gravelly minerality to it on both the nose and palate. It's very fresh, some nice soft malt in there and gentle fruit as well.
Yeah, and because they're ex-quarter casks, they're actually ex-Islay quarter casks. And, you know, if anybody knows anything about Islay whiskey, as soon as you mention quarter cask, Lafroig jumps to mind. So with a non-peated spirit in peated casks, plus being a small cask, our first distiller, our master distiller, who came up at the very beginning of the build, Shane Fraser from Glenfarclas, was given 2 tasks basically. Make a whiskey that's relatively young, because we didn't do gin, vodka or rum. We're a whiskey distillery. The clue's in the title. We only want Wolfburn to be synonymous with a quality single malt Scotch. And make a whiskey of your own choosing. So by using these small quarter casks, you get more intense maturation, faster maturation, more spirit to wood ratio and contact as well. So yeah, you're right. The Wolfburn, the name of the distillery, is named after the water source, the Wolf water, a burn being a small stream in Scotland, and it is a small stream. You know, you couldn't go canyoning down it, you couldn't go whitewater rafting or kayaking down it. Depends how tall you are, it depends how it comes up to your waist or your chest or whatever, if it's in spate. But it's a natural spring that rises in the moors and it runs to the sea. And it runs past where the old distillery was, which is about 300 meters from where the new distillery is. Our intrepid owners, as I say, trunched along the moors to find where the old distillery was. Andrew had an idea of the closed distilleries of Scotland, and Wolfburn was one of them. And it just so happened that there was a new industrial estate, Henderson Park, built just at the back of the Wolfburn. And one day, Andrew came in to Harry and said, "Do you fancy building a whiskey distillery?" Now, these guys had left the core, they had various business interests, they had just sold their business and were sitting as consultants for a couple of years. So they were very bored. They had a bit of money in the bank. And Harry said, "What do we know about building a whiskey distillery?" "We drink enough of this stuff," was the reply. And that's what Google's for. So basically, that's what they did. They sat on Google. They Googled how to build a whiskey distillery, and then they phoned around the well-kent whiskey distilleries of Scotland and probably asked all sorts of weird and wonderful questions. One of the distilleries that they phoned was Kilchoman, and they spoke to Anthony Wills. And Anthony says, "Look, guys, if you're really interested, come and see us on Islay. Come and spend some time with us, and I'll tell you the real deal. I'll tell you what it takes. I'll tell you how much it takes, and I'll tell you the ins and the outs and the pitfalls." And that's exactly what they did. Sorry, I thought that was a question coming in. I'll let Melissa.
Yeah. No, it's one. I mean, Anthony would be a good person to tell you how hard and how expensive it is to start a distillery and a brand from scratch. James, did you want to share any thoughts on the Northland?
Yeah, maybe on the Northland itself for sure. So the first thing I noticed is, having followed this since that first release that Mark was mentioning, it's so cool to me to see how this has evolved. And in a way, I actually feel like, even though clearly like there is more maturity to this than those early releases. And Mark, I'm sure you'll explain kind of how that process works of, the evolution as the whiskey's matured. What I notice about it is you're right, it's very elegant. Like, I love that it is still very spirit driven, even though like this isn't like a full bodied thick style of malt, but yet it still has like a definable character to it. And, that's actually the type of whiskey that I get excited about. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very important for us as a distillery to get that unique character. And how do we do that? We've got quite a long fermentation, anywhere between sort of 3 and 4 days. In fact, probably nearer sort of 80 to maybe 110 hours as well. And that's very expensive. It's not just your 50 odd hours and then off to the next stage, as the accountant might think. That's if the bean counters decide to run distilleries, but we're about taste and flavour. We're traditional whiskey makers, and that's why we store everything in traditional dunnage warehouses, no more than 3 casks high. And that's why we bottle everything on site, actually at the distillery in Thurso. It means that, again, we have supreme control over everything that we do as well. And it's good that way, because our chests and our passion we can basically say, yeah, blood, sweat and tears has gone into making that whiskey. We're happy for it to go out. But again, blood, sweat and tears doesn't taste nice in a glass. That's why we've got to produce a phenomenal spirit. And with the Northland coming out to great world acclaim, it really just put a fire in our belly to continue that, because whiskey making is about the consistency. It's about getting the process right, and then it's about replication, but then just changing the wood management process just to get different flavors and tastes. You're right what you're saying about the minerality. You're right what you're saying about the sort of the lightness of spirit that we do. We don't fill the stills when we're doing the distillation to capacity. Our wash stills 5,500, our spirit stills 3,800. They're small in comparison. We're only doing 125,000 litres as well. So Glenlivet maybe could do that in a week. Diageo could probably do that in a day with their distilleries. But for us, it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality of taste and flavour as well.
Mm-hmm.
I love the Northland because it just gives you just that little soupçon, just that little wisp of smoke as well, just through the maturation. Just that little bit of peatiness, which reminds me of home and the old sort of peat fires from the old sort of fire guards as well. So it's really, really nice in that respect. Yes, it's fruity. Yes, it's floral. There's a bit of sort of nutmeggy spice. It's quite orangey. It's got a lovely sort of citrus twang about it. I like, and I really like the little bit of salinity. Maybe not as much as Old Pulteney, but because we are maturing everything in Caithness at the distillery, the sea air will roll across the countryside. From the beach at Thurso, you can look out over to Orkney, the old man of Hoy, we see, and that lovely sea air. If there's anything, I stay down in the central belt of Scotland now, and if there's anything that I miss, is that beautiful sort of saltiness in the air, that lovely, that lovely taste really, and on the nose just walking about. I mentioned that I wasn't from the industry. I was a police officer in Scotland for 30 years. I retired about 5 years ago, and I've been doing some Wolfburn work for the last 7 years, since sort of 2016. I used to be a gamekeeper, as they say. I used to go into situations to boos and hisses and swear words when I walked into situations to maybe close parties down or to get people out of the pub. Now I walk into situations with a bottle of Wolfburn under my arm to great applause and great acclaim and claps and kisses as well. So poacher turned gamekeeper, you've heard the saying, I was a gamekeeper and I've probably turned poacher now. But I'm quite happy that, because I'm representing the distillery on a global stage. A mere guardian, as I said. So yeah, the second one tonight, our Aurora, is the same non-peated spirit that matured in slightly different casks this time. This also came out in 2016, our second release. This was initially 25% sherry casks and 75% bourbon casks, full maturation, so it wasn't even just a sherry finish. But as time grew on and we had more access to more of our older stock, this is our sherry oak, so we decided to put more sherry in it. So instead of 25% sherry casks, we've put 50% sherry casks in it. But the most important thing about this and why we made the change was, yes, it was our sherry oak, and yes, we had more sherry casks available through our maturation, but we communicated this to people as well. We let people know that we were doing this. And the best thing about bringing people to the brand is it's about that communication. It's about keeping your integrity, it's about keeping your moral core, and it's about making sure that your fan base or the wolf pack is aware of what we're doing and why we're doing it as well. Sometimes there's nothing worse than coming to a brand and you start drinking a certain expression, then all of a sudden it changes and your mind just stops in its tracks and says, wait a minute, I've been used to drinking this for a number of years, and all of a sudden the taste change. Is it my taste? Is there something happening with me? Or is it the distillery? Have they changed the recipe? Some people will go off a brand for that reason. But when we decided to put more sherry aged whiskey in our Aurora, we communicated the fact. So that was very, very important for us. And it's named after the Aurora Borealis, the Northern Lights, which we see from the Caithness coast as well. We sit on the sort of 58th degree. If you come to Thurso, maybe Andrew, if you have, and it's a winter time, and the Aurora Borealis is there. It's a beautiful, spectacular sight. You know, the lights dancing in the skies, all different colours. It's mesmerising. You'll know that as well from Canada when you see it as well. But I always say, if you come to Thurso and the atmospheric conditions are bad, or there's a lot of cloud cover, if you drink plenty of Aurora, you're bound to see something dancing in the sky. You know, it might even be pink elephants, I don't know. But again, please drink responsibly. But it's, you know, it's just another string to the bow if you come to Caithness Coast, especially in the winter time, and you see the Aurora Borealis. It's just an absolute bonus as well. And the Aurora for me is, it's actually our best-selling whiskey worldwide. We're in 40 markets across the world, 40, not 14, 40. It's maybe just the way that I speak, just that Northern Highland lilt as well. 40 markets across the world, and there's only 18 people in the entire company at Wolfburn. 18. Again, we talk about maybe whiskey factories that run their stills 24/7 and it's controlled by computer. That's not us. We've got 5 warehouses on site. We bottle on site. We store it on site. And we've got 7 people on production, and the rest are our owners, our accountant, our admin, our tour staff, and me. I get the best job. I'm like the big jazz hands at the front of the distillery. I get to meet and greet people. I get to see the happy smiling faces on people when I get the liquid to the lips. I get to see them on world events, drinking our whiskey, and the happiness that it can bring. It's sounds corny, I know, but hey, that's how I am. I'm passionate about my town. I'm passionate about the area of Scotland. I'm passionate about our whiskey, and I just want to spread the love. I want to share that passion with people, and hopefully, again, by doing tastings like this, it just excites people, and it puts our claws and our hooks in you as well.
I think what strikes me about both the Northland and the Aurora, and I mean, this is good for a distillery that's still fairly young. You've only bottled a 10-year-old to date, is just the amount of promise that the spirit in these whiskeys shows. I mean, it's difficult to compare these to something that's maybe got 5 or 10 more years behind them, but yeah, there's some nice character there. I like that sherry element that's creeping into this one. As Harmony said, some nutty tones, chocolate, getting a little bit fruity. They still have that same minerality, that nice little saltiness, that sort of soft floral tone and fruity elements, but it shows really nicely in the malt coming through here too. James?
Yeah, I will say, this actually, Mark, is our bestseller in Canada too, is the Aurora.
Brilliant.
That and the Morven tend to be kind of neck and neck. But I don't think we quite have the batch yet that has the 50-50 sherry. I think that'll be the next one that comes through. But so yeah, in a way, I feel like these first two, like you really get a sense of the distillate quality, and I think that's kind of cool. Again, you can see that common thread, again, that kind of slaty, you know, hint of smoke, kind of freshness to them.
It's true, and like the Aurora for me, it's got a quite sort of melon-esque, sort of clean, fresh palate, lip smacking whiskey, I call it as well. It draws the cheeks together and smacks the lips. A wee bit of white pepper spice on the tongue as well for me. Again, just to remind you that it's there. But yeah, you're right. It's got that sort of coffee or chocolate bitterness to it, but bitterness in a way that it adds to the flavor profile. It's not, you know, it's not overwhelming in the bitterness. It just gives you a different taste, and it makes you stop and think about the whiskey that you're drinking as well. It's very palatable and very dangerous. That's why we had to put it in a clear glass so people could see how much they were drinking, rather than the dark green bottle like the Morven as well. But yeah, that's what's in my glass. The Aurora. It's an absolute bang and dram. Now, in the whiskies in our core range, all of them have won gold medals at various international wines and spirits festivals. The Aurora, for some reason, has never won gold. It's won silver. You know, second place loser, I suppose. That's the sort of way we look at it. Gold's the standard, and anything else is comes into pale insignificance. But it's funny that it's our bestseller. Why is that? you're getting the sweetness from the bourbon, you're getting the sweetness from the sherry, and you're getting that beautiful crescendo that we meet in the middle. That sort of oakiness, that sort of caramel tones from the bourbon, but you're getting that dry, nutty spiciness from those Oloroso sherry casks as well. So it really appeals to everybody because it's maybe not cask strength, it's maybe not peated, it's just a really nice and easy drinking dram. It's a really good drinking whiskey as well for the Aurora. So yeah, a good start for us in 2016. We came at the traps at toute vitesse. You know, we were going at it hammer and tong, and that's the best thing about Wolfburn. Let's get the process, let's get the building blocks, the DNA, our essence, the fruity, floral minerality, the light vibrancy of our spirit. I got asked at a tasting, I'm just back from Sweden. In the last 3 weeks, I've been in Paris, San Francisco, Sweden, and the Netherlands. You know, it never stops. It's really, really busy. This is our busy time. I call it the silly season coming up to Christmas, but it's the best season. It's the best way to get out and about, and again, getting the liquid to the lips. But yeah, I've lost my track. Can't even remember.
Not to worry. I think maybe we're ready to go on to another dram.
Brilliant.
Move on to the Morven, the one that I tried tricking you with earlier.
Now the Morven's something a bit different. We run the stills lightly peated, so the malted barley that we buy in. We don't do our own maltings on site. Caithness is Europe's largest peat bog. It's flat as a pancake. The soil is very nitrogen rich, and I'm told that barley grown in a very nitrogen rich field makes it okay for whiskey production, but not the best for yield, etc. So we get our malted barley delivered every month. It's about 30 tonne every month. Malt prices have doubled this year, unfortunately, due to various reasons across the globe. So we're having to consume that hit. Spirit duty in the UK has gone up by £3 a litre as well, which is crazy. £3 out of every 4 goes to the government, but we'll not get political on this. I'm quite happy that we can make a spirit at a reasonable price and people can justify it and buy it. So the Morven, a lightly peated spirit of 10 ppm, 10 phenol parts per million. We didn't want to give it a big, heavy iodine or a big peat monster. We don't want to overwhelm our spirit. We want our fruity, floral, light vibrancy to be there, but the smoke just gives it just that little bit extra edge. Now, the maturation of these casks were the same ex-Isla quarter casks that the Northland was matured in, and we've added some first fill bourbon casks as well. This is a beautiful, beautiful balance of sweetness and smoke. There's a sort of malty salinity here as well. You're getting that sort of lovely sort of vanilla flavour coming through. And this is a great whiskey for people that want to get into peated whiskey, because this is a beautiful open door. This is why it's very popular, because it isn't like licking an ashtray or chewing a cigar. It's not the recycled hospital. It's not too medicinal. It's just got that lovely sort of heathery smoke, that lovely sweet smoke, and that lovely sweet malty salinity to it as well. A wee bit of honey, a wee bit of vanilla, and that oakiness is coming through as well. So this is something just that wee bit different. And we run the stills lightly peated just before the summer shutdown. So if there's any trace of peat in the process after we've cleaned everything, after the summer, we fill ex-Isla quarter casks with the first runs that come out after the summer shutdown. So if there is a trace of peat in anything, it's going into a peated cask. So it's negligible, really, in that respect. Morven is named after the highest peak in Caithness. As I say, Caithness is very flat. Morven rises to just over 700 metres in height. It's not a Munro, it's classed as a Corbett, and it's visible from the majority of the countryside when you're travelling about. And Morven's also a girl's name, and my niece is called Morven for that reason as well. So it's a really nod to the family. I know you've given me screen sharing capability. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of batter through the tasting, and then at the very end, I'm going to bring you back and I'll share you some sort of quick photographs of just the area, of the stills, of what we do and why we do it, just to sort of whet your interest at the very last gasp, so I can leave you with some visual stimulus. Because I know listening to me for an hour and a half, you know, it's like putting needles in your eyes probably, but at least we change that when we give you some great whiskey to have.
Just commenting on this quickly. It's been a long time since I've had the Morven, and I think one of the things that I like about this whiskey is young single malts, like single malts that are sub 8-10 years of age, can often be just a little boring. And I think it's because they just haven't had enough time in the oak. But when you add that additional element of peat into the mixture, it kind of hides some of those things, or it adds to the character that's there in a way that makes it a little bit more interesting. And I think that's why, and it's interesting you brought up Kilchoman and Anthony Wills earlier, why Kilchoman was able to get away with and do very well at selling 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old whiskeys, because that peat element adds something to the equation that just makes the whiskey a bit more approachable, as long as you're not somebody who finds that off-putting or too strong.
Yeah, the smokiness for me, it's really, it can sit on the back palate and it just rolls and it puffs out. I describe the sort of the smokiness of our whiskies as more like a veil, and the taste can actually open the veil and push through the veil and come back and forward, but the veil's there just giving it that lovely waft, that lovely wisp of smoke, but not overwhelming it. It's adding, as you say, it's adding that nuance. Now, the 10 ppm, people ask us, will we do anything more heavily peated? Never say never in business, but at the moment, we're quite happy doing what we're doing. Let's get it right and let's replicate it. You know, that's what the whiskey industry is. And it's funny, as you say, about the lightness of our spirit as well. Nothing that you're going to drink tonight is going to be too aggressive. Although it's a young spirit, you're not getting that spirity bite. You're getting that, you know, that maturity, although it is a young whiskey, but it's not going to be like the hot poker going down the throat. It's not going to be that horrible retch or that recoil that you get with some whiskies. It's going to be more like a tear rolling down the cheek, a tear of happiness, a tear of joy, shall we say. And sometimes you'll be able to trace the heat going down your throat. And again, yes, it's going to put a fire in your belly, but it will put a smile on your face. It really will. It's not just about the nose. It's not just about the taste. It's about the mouthfeel and what it does when you're consuming it as well. I love a whiskey sometimes that you smell A, but when you taste it, you taste B, and your brain just stops and you do a little reset. You know, you go, you do a reset like that, because it's like, I wasn't expecting that. And it just lets you focus what's in the glass. And I love a whiskey like that as well. I like a whiskey that when you nose A and you get A, you know, I do like that as well, but I like to be challenged. And again, at whiskey shows and festivals, I love people coming past the Wolfburn brand, because it's a brand that flies under the radar. We're very, again, I'll use the term, we're very humble. But when people haven't heard us, that's an opportunity for me to dig my hole, to cover it with branches and leaves, bring folk to the stand, let them drink the whiskey and let them fall into my trap as well. Yeah, there's a wee bit of whiskey snobbery out there that people won't drink unless it's got an age statement on it, and they'll always look for the big hitters or the well-known whiskies. But when you go to shows and festivals, be courageous, be adventurous, try something new, go outside your comfort zone, and that's when you get the wow factor, the amazement factor. You'll find the diamond in the dust somewhere that hits your palate. And that is the great thing about Wolfburn at shows and festivals and tastings. Everything that we produce, our heart and soul goes into. And as traditional whiskey makers, we're drinking the core range at the very beginning here. So we're casting our net very wide, excuse me, which means that the majority of the whiskey drinking public in our first 5 expressions tonight will find something that they like.
Mhm.
Now that's sound business sense.
James, do you have any thoughts on this one you want to share?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely partial to this lightly peated style of Wolfburn. I think it's just something about it really sings to me. I think what's interesting about it is all these new distilleries, of course, of Wolfburn being part of that group, like they all add this interesting element to the conversation, and especially I think in the peated realm, like just like Kilchoman and Berkladdie added these kind of like new elements to Isla. I feel like Wolfburn, in essence, is adding this new kind of flavor of that whole area, whether it's peated Scapa or Highland Park, or even some of those salty, briny elements of Pulteney. Like this whiskey to me, like almost is like a new piece of the puzzle that kind of sits in there, and I think that's kind of cool.
Mhm.
And it reminds me, Andrew, it's funny, the smoke in this always reminds me of, if you've ever, as a kid, I had these model rockets that we would light off, and they had a very distinct smelling smoke. It was a little bit like fireworks, and this reminds me of that a little bit.
Yeah,
That sulphurous hit, maybe.
well,
Just a touch.
I don't know if it's the sulfur. It's just really that I know exactly what you're talking about, James, because my parents had made the mistake of giving me a model rocketry kit as a child, and I learned the wrong lesson that the rockets would catch on fire. So I made them so that they would catch on fire in a spectacular way. So I know exactly that scent you're talking about. I think it's more just like a really clean, ashy smoke is what it is, rather than a sulfurous note.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I quite agree with that as well. I sort of describe it as like the burning embers of a campfire. As a child, if we ever had a bonfire, we would stick a tatty, we'd stick a potato in tin foil and fire it into the coals, and it was that raking through the bonfire, trying to get your potato, trying to get your tatty out, and then eating it in the side. And that this is the great thing about whiskey. It's iconic. The memory it conjures up, the smells, the tastes, and if they're good tastes and if you've enjoyed them, it's a positive response. But ultimately, if it's a bad experience, your whiskey will taste horrible to you. I have a friend that used to get leathered, used to get hit with a slipper as a child. This big leather slipper that their dad used to wear, not just the one, it was a pair of slippers, but they only used to get hit with one. But anything with a leathery note, he'll shy away from, because again, it's about a wee bit of regression, I suppose. He smells the leather, he associates that with being naughty and getting smacked or something like that. And it's just part of his makeup, that anything with a big leathery note he shies away from. He doesn't not like it, but he says no, it's like too much of a memory for me, so I'm not
Mark,
gonna drink it.
I know exactly what you're talking about. In university, my friend Becky and I drank a Texas Mickey of spiced rum. And the next morning I awoke to what was a local celebrity's wedding. Jerry Forbes, who's a DJ on one of the classic rock stations here, was getting married on the A channel. This is going back like 25 plus years. And to this day, I don't know if it was the wedding or the rum that made me that sick, but I can't handle spiced rum and haven't been able to since. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm a bit like that with Jack, I'm afraid. Where we are in Thurso, we had an American base just outside Merkel. And my previous job before I joined the police, I worked with a construction firm, and we were putting up the security fence. I got pally with the Marine who was on guard, and he told me about the PX and how cheap it was. And I asked him to get me a litre of Jack Daniels, which I took down to it was the Dingwall Music Festival. I first saw the Proclaimers in the late 80s sort of thing. But I drank half of the bottle of Jack Daniels and I filled the other half up with Coke, and then I drank that as well. And I've never been so sick in all my life, and I just can't touch the stuff now. So I know exactly where you're coming from.
It was either that or the Proclaimers or both. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, that's sacrilege. You can't say the Proclaimers. You
No,
know
I'm
that.
just kidding.
No.
All right, we should probably keep things rolling. Why don't we move on to the Langskip?
Yeah, now we jumped from 46%. This is what we've had previously for the first three. The Langskip's now 58%, near cask strength. A wee nod to where we are in the world, as again, 58th degree on the map. These are all bourbon cask whiskey. Now, you shouldn't be in the industry if you can't make a great bourbon aged whiskey. So this is a great benchmark when you're comparing whiskies that you like, all bourbon casks. For me, this is called the Langskip after the Viking longship. This is, our part of our rich heritage and our community and our history in Thurso being Thorstown, as I said earlier on. And if you can think of that Viking longship smashing through the waves, that feeling of the water splashing on the front of the boat as the boat drives through, and then in its wake, as it speeds through the sea, you get that beautiful lingering tail, that long finish. Now, this is, I don't condone violence, but this is like a playful slap and then a lovely warm embrace. It rushes to the front of the palate for me, and then it slowly dissipates. Typical in sort of bourbon aged, you do get that lovely sort of creme brulee, you get that lovely caramel, you get a wee bit of marzipan sweetness, that almond nuttiness, especially when you take a breath over your tongue. The 58%, it just sits and it does linger to give you that lovely, lovely lingering tail, that beautiful long finish to it as well. And even at 58%, it's very, it's smooth and rounded. It's got a bite to it. There's a certain presence to it, but it's very, very drinkable. And this is my go-to for maybe a two-fingered measure in my favorite glass, listening to my favorite music, just kicking back in my favorite chair. This is, well, when I say two fingers, that's like a two-fingered dram as well. But this is the one for me, is a beautiful savouring dram. Yeah, well, a wee dot of ice in it as well, just opening up that 58%, and just that iconic sound of you swirling that ice around the glass, that little clink, clink, clink. It's mesmerizing, it really is. But this is our fourth in our core expression. The Morven came out in 2017. The Langskip came out 2018. These were our oldest ex-bourbon casks that we had maturing in the warehouse. So these were 5-year-old, and we added some 4-year-old. But as James says, the evolution of the distillery, as we have access to more mature stock, what we want to do is mix it up a wee bit and give that maturity to our whiskey. But it's a very, very balanced approach, because again, we have to keep the consistency of taste and flavour to the original, because we want to create the link, but we don't want to change the recipe as well. So yeah, nowadays our core range, instead of being 3, 4, 5, you're maybe looking at 5, 6, 7. But we like to sort of mix it up to try and get that original taste and flavour for our consumers that have came to the brand as well. But yeah, the Langskip, 58%. It's a wee bit of a bite, a wee bit of a nip, but just again reminds you that it's there. But all bourbon casks, you can't hide. It's a cracking whiskey, this.
Yeah, obviously there's some nice parallels with the Northland. This is just kind of more expressive, a little bit more concentrated. It does seem to have a little bit more kind of that fresh bourbon character coming through, but the minerality is still there, the malt's still there. So you can see those two draws there. And for me, I think it drinks well at 58. There's no rough edges to the spirit. It's not sharp, it's not raw. I mean, I would truly love to see this at like 10 years, just to see how developed and how expressive it is. And I mean, I know we're on to a 10 years shortly, but yeah, again, I think this is just showing the direction that the distillery and the brand is going in, and it looks good.
Yeah, and 4 different tastes and flavors in our 4 whiskies, but this again, a non-peated spirit. So you've got a non-peated, you've got a sherry oak, you've got a lightly peated, and then you've now got a cask strength. So from a business perspective, yes, we have to make money. Yes, we have to cast our net, but let's try and catch the whiskey drinking public. So hopefully, if neither of the four are your favourite, we've got sherry casks coming next in our 10-year-old, but hopefully, we've hit part of the flavour profile that people like. And it's it's one thing that we do at Wolfburn is we concentrate on the craft. Sometimes I can describe it as, buying furniture. If you want something that everybody else wants, you go to IKEA, you buy a flat pack, you build it, it's functional, it does what it says on the tin, it lasts. But we are traditionalists. Everything's done by sight, by sound, by touch. We're more like a carpenter that'll come to your house, we'll gauge the space, we'll have an idea in the back of our head, what wood we have, how it's seasoned, what that might look like. We'll manufacture something handcrafted, artisanal, bespoke, and then we'll put it in your house that it's going to be quite a unique dram. Somebody asked me what our plans were for the future as well, and I went full Bond villain. World domination. This is my invisible cat, but if anybody doesn't know, Ernest Blofeld reference, and for all your younger members of the audience, $1 billion. That's go Austin Powers maybe. But yeah, as a young distillery, we want the accolade that somebody's going to pick up a glass and say, that's a Wolfburn. That nose, that taste, that minerality, that light, fruity, floral vibrancy. That's the Wolfburn. That's the unique characteristic that we want running through all our whiskey. And our wood management program, 60–70% of the taste and flavour will come from the cask. But again, like the peat in our malted barley, we don't want to overwhelm our spirit. Our wood management program has been designed that we basically want to proclaim our spirit. It's like scoring a goal in the cup final for your team. The rest of your team will raise you on their shoulders and parade you around the ground to the huge applause. This is what we want to do with our wood management policy and our wood selection as well. We want to give and elevate our spirit and not overwhelm it. And even, just using one, like the Langskip as an example, just bourbon casks, and that Wolfburn unique spirit, that profile still shines through.
James, comments on the Langskip?
I have one question actually for Mark. Now, at the beginning, did you mention that some of those peated the quarter casks end up in this as well?
No, but I can let you into a little secret. We did a batting of the Langskip some time ago, and in the warehouse, everything is run shipshape and Bristol fashion. In fact, the distillery, our owners are ex-military men, so everything is run like a military operation, which is great. We usually, when we do the peated run, it's peated bourbon casks, they get filled, they get racked, and then we do a little pea chalk on the cask to make sure that it's understandable. There's a peated spirit in there. For some reason, I don't know whether a whiskey was involved, but there was a certain week that the pea never went on some casks. So when we've done some Langskip vatting, we've suddenly realized post-vatting and post-bottling that we've managed to put some peated bourbon casks in. So if you get a little hint of smoke on the Langskip here, I don't know if that's the way you were going, James, but this might be from the vatting that we did. So it's quite a unique Langskip if it's got a peated spirit in it.
No, putting it beside the Northland, I think it has less. And that's kind of what I was hinting at, was that, is there a purposeful difference between the recipes? I kind of just was, fishing for a little bit more information about how that breakdown of the Northland versus the Langskip works behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I've maybe opened Pandora's box and told you a wee secret, but this is what we are at Wolfburn. We're open, we're honest. If we make mistakes, when folk ask, we'll tell them. we're not sort of broadcasting everything, every little thing that goes wrong in the distillery. We want to champion our successes rather than the sort of the negative aspects of the distillery. If things work, we'll do small batches, or we'll do some finishes, or we'll do some unusual maturations. But as traditional whiskey makers, you're not going to see us do some wild and wacky stuff as well. And that's what people love with Wolfburn, whether it's the visit, whether it's any of the connection that we have doing events like this, or connections at the stand or at festivals. They like that personable quality of Wolfburn, that approachfulness as well, that honesty, that again, the integrity in our moral core remains constant as well. And that's very easy to do when it's, it's very easy to do when it is part of you and it's part of our sort of work ethic as well. When you come into the distillery, if you look up to your right, above 2 ex-Caperdonach washbacks that we have, we've got a big sign saying "Fortune favours the brave." It's on the back of the t-shirt actually here. And it means you don't get anything in life unless you get off your backside and you put the effort in. But with risk comes reward. And certainly that's the sort of drive for our owners. It's a drive for us at the distillery, that as a young distillery, we're striving to be the best that we can. And we're taking calculated risks, we're doing things, but we'll get the reward. And the reward is bringing people to the brand and getting them to taste the lovely spirit as well. We'll maybe go on to our 10-year-old, and I'll speak about the sort of the distillery build and how we came about. And 10 years later, it's such a huge milestone and celebration for us as well.
Absolutely. Here, I'll put that up on the screen.
I love that sound. That should be a message alert on a phone. It's like when I do shows and festivals, as soon as somebody opens a bottle, especially when we're setting up, we're all like little meerkats. We're all like, oh, who's opening a bottle? What is it? Can I get a taste? That's the benefit. That's the good side of the job. But the 10-year-old, man, great celebration for us. Our first casks were filled on the 25th of January, 2013. A significant date in Scotland, Burns Night. It's a significant date across the world. When anybody has an ounce of Scottish in them, wants to wear tartan, wants to sing songs, wants to drink whiskey and have a right good old party. We certainly had a party this year to celebrate our 10-year-old. These are all Oloroso sherry casks, full maturation. These are second fill casks as well. So again, it's not going to give you that big sherry bomb that you might expect. Yes, it's going to give you that sort of dark, nutty, spicy sweetness that you would expect, that dryness from the Oloroso. But again, the distillery character is going to shine through from this. This is at 46%. The reason why we did the Regal Royal Red, it was a standout. We want that to be instantly recognizable as well. But this is going to be part of the core range as well. And what we want, we know that people like a number on a whiskey. Some of the whiskey buying public, they like that. So when we've got a big 10 on a big Regal Red box, it's going to draw people towards the brand. So again, great marketing. We do all our designs in-house. Paul Collins, our design guru, our brand manager, designs absolutely everything. And some of the designs that we've done for some of our expressions across the globe have been absolutely tremendous, very eye-catching. We're social animals, us humans as well. We like to feel part of something. As I mentioned, the wolf pack, the Canadian wolf pack that we have on the tasting tonight. And when you feel part of something, you can feel relaxed. You can feel loved, valued, respected. And when you're comfortable in your surroundings and you're comfortable with the people, you can be more responsive as well. You can be more open, you can be more honest. And this is what we're trying to create as a brand as well. We want to bring people to the brand, include them. We're going on an adventure, folks. So all we say is just come along, grab the coattails, come along for the ride. And 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, and I don't know if I'll still be here, but the legacy of Wolfburn and what we've done to get it on the map so far will stay with everybody as well. That's the great thing about the internet, you know. My grandkids or whatever, I'll still be able to, oh, there's Papa Westy on the telly, or there's Papa Westy on the internet, and we can still listen to my dulcet tones, and we can still do the tour of Wolfburn that's online. They can see the slow build of Wolfburn online as well if you want to do the deep dive. And that's the great thing about technology. Like this, a Zoom tasting for Canada at 2 o'clock in the morning in Scotland. It's absolutely brilliant. And I love this. You know, I love the fact that I've had the invite. And I probably should have said at the very beginning, thank you very much for the invite. But I think I missed to say that because I was just in full pelt. Thanks to Andrew and thanks to James for the invite. Thanks for everybody for popping on tonight. So yeah, sherry aged, all full Oloroso second fill maturation, our 10-year-old, a great milestone. Slange and celebrating.
Slange. Now, would this be from one of your first distillations, like our early distillations in the history of the distillery?
Yeah. These were the first sherry casks that we filled, which is, you know, tremendous when you think about it. You know, the journey that we've been on, and the journey, you know, that everybody's been on at the distillery, to have a 10-year-old come out. It's you blink and you don't know where the time's gone. A lot of people that I meet on the circuit as well, they go, Wolfburn, 10-year-old, my God, where did that come from? That sort of just snuck up on you. And then all of a sudden you're like, 10-year-old in everybody's face, which is great. You can hear me talking, actually. I've just had a sip of it and my mouth's salivating. You know, that flavour and taste on my palate is just making it's just got that sort of moreish sort of wetness to it, that lovely sort of salivating whiskey. It's very subtle, actually, the sherry from this. It's a very elegant whiskey. It's a very you know, it's a very palatable smoothness to it. I'm getting a lot more of that sort of silkiness to it on this, that lovely sort of nutmeg spice, that lovely sort of dark fruit, a bit of sort of raisin-esque flavour to it as well. An absolute banging whiskey. I had said, can we not have a higher strength in the 10-year-old, but it's part of our core expression. So yeah, sound business sense, 46%. It goes that wee bit extra, and it's added to the core. It's added to the backbone of the brand. And this is what we do as a distillery. We get the core expressions, which are our firm foundations, and then we can grow the business upon that. So having all the 5 expressions that we've had before, that allows us to do some small batches and do special cask strength, to do some special bottlings as well. But I hope you agree. Again, I'll remind everybody that I'm completely biased, but I hope you agree that the first 5 whiskies that we've had tonight, with all different characteristics, but with the Wolfburn DNA running through everything, that light, fruity, floral, light vibrancy, we're doing something right. And it's great that people like yourselves can come to tastings like this and taste our spirit as well. So here's to us and here's to you, Sam.
Cheers. James, do you want to chime in on this one?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, anyone that's on the call that has followed Wolfburn from like the very, very first releases that we got here, there is definitely something about this that reminds me of those earlier ones. I think the first 4 in the lineup, as they showed today, like you get more of what I think is like the developing Wolfburn character. And this, like this reminds me a little bit more, like it's got a slightly divergent character. And my guess is, Mark, I remember you talking about this when we talked about Victoria a few years ago, that like over time, especially in those early years, like you do get a little bit of variation, right? As you know, everything's getting sorted out. And I think that's kind of one of the cool things about this release is it just has a slight it shows the DNA still, but it has like some slight kind of variations in the style.
Yeah, you're right, James. And you know, that's good because you want that connection between expressions. You want the link between everything. You don't want to be things, especially in the maturation, you don't want things to be total left field, total right field. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, what is the distillery? What is the character? What are they trying to do? And what we want is we want the linkage, like a chain, or whether it's the DNA, the essence. That's a good sort of analogy as well. We want, from our very first to our very last, we want that connection, because ultimately this non-peated spirit that we did, like when we filled the ex-quarter casks for the Northland, the maturity will give it an extra dimension, but we want the connection with the firstborn, and we're happy to do that, and we're happy to hear that comes through in the process as well.
All right, what have we got next here? I'm just conscious of time here for you, Mark.
Small batch 458.
Batch 458, let's do it.
Yeah, this is something again that we like to do every year or every 9 months. We like to put out a small batch, limited to around about 5,000 bottles usually. Our first small batch came out in 2017 before the Morven release. It was the batch 128, which was a peated spirit in peated spirit in ex-bourbon casks. This one, the 458, is a combination of Pedro Jimenez sherry casks, bourbon casks, and a lightly peated spirit. And this is just over 7 years in maturation. And I think this was 5,100 bottles worldwide in 40 markets. We like to give an allocation, that people take their allocation, distributor-wise, it lands. If it doesn't, it's offered to somebody else as well. This is sitting at 46%. And I didn't mention that we don't chill filter our whiskey. We don't take any of the fats, the proteins, the esters, the congeners out. Sometimes a steak needs a bit of fat, a wee bit of marbling for the flavour. So this is what we want to do again as traditional whiskey makers. And we don't colour our whiskey. We don't add any E150 caramel colouring. Looking on a shelf, everything's the same. But for us, when you look at maybe different battings, there might be a slight difference of colour as well. But we're super proud because, again, we're traditional whiskey makers. That's the way we do it. The 458, again, lightly peated spirit that we had in the Morven. It's only 10 ppm, with a PX sherry full maturation, and then battered together with bourbon casks with a lightly peated spirit as well. This is a wee bit more decadent for me. This is a wee bit more sweet. It's a wee bit more lush. It's got beautiful sort of traces of sort of sponge pudding, figs, dates, walnuts, a wee bit of sort of toffee sweetness coming through, and that beautiful smokiness, again, giving that little bit of depth and resonance to it, in my opinion. We did have the 318 previous to this, which was Oloroso sherry casks, and that was a huge success. And this is why we've gone with the Pedro Jimenez sherry casks for the next small batch. The 458 relates to warehouse number 4 and Stau number 58, where the casks were matured, just like every other small batch that we've done, the 128, the 270, the 155, 375, 204, the 318, and the new 177, which are Caribbean rum casks as well. But those cheeky Marines, those cheeky Royal Marines, if you take the numbers and you bring them out and you put them all on a page, what's the correlation? What do all the numbers mean as well? They're all caliber of ordnance. They're all caliber of bullet or something that these guys have been using over the years as well. You've got some Magnum rounds in, you've got some Holland and Holland, you've got some Winchester rifle rounds. And again, when you own a distillery, you want to put your own stamp on it. You want to have a wee bit of fun with it as well. And even you showed a picture there, Andrew, of the mythical sea wolf outside the distillery on Caithness slate, on Caithness stone. We wanted the sea wolf, the mythical beast that liveth on land and sea, as our motif, because we're next to the sea and we needed the Wolfburn. That's our water source, so the sea and the wolf. But Royal Marine Commandos around the world are also known as the sea wolves because we fight on land and sea. And that's the great thing about our owners. Yeah, and that's the size of a lion, that sculpture. One of my friends, Karen Standing, he's an artiste, and when I got involved with the company, I knew his his expertise in making sort of animal sculptures. So I contacted Carn and he got commissioned for that as well. It's like the Kelpies of the north. And if you're traveling through the Central Belt, two big beautiful horses between Falkirk and Grangemouth at the canals. Ours aren't as big as that, our Seawolf, but it's a lovely sort of photo opportunity outside the distillery. And it's quite funny actually, because you mentioned earlier on about visiting the distillery about 7 years ago when there was nothing. There was probably a cask outside the Wolfburn distillery. That was the only indicator that it was a distillery. From the outside, it's been described as one of the ugliest distilleries in Scotland. It's looked like a cowshed. I don't care. It's like when I look on a Zoom tasting, I don't care what you look like. You know, it's what's in here that counts. And as soon as you chap the door at Wolfburn, you're into the belly of the beast. It's a modern day efficient distillery, but there's a beautiful flow to it. It's been designed by Forsyths. They built our entire distillery within 4 months in 2012, which is unheard of. The stills themselves were the vision of Richard Forsyth, the owner of the company, had just taken over from his father. And we wanted to use these stills of his dreams to make our whiskey as well. So there's so many sort of stories, there's so many connections with our distillery. In 10 years, you know, I could just, you know, I could wax lyrical about stories. I'll tell you a quick one, and before you cut me off and we move on to the next one and we discuss this one. One of the distillery manufacturers came up and said to Andrew, one of our owners, so your water test, what did you do with your water test? What were the results? Is the water going to give you good whiskey? Andrew looked at them blankly and said, water test? Well, we contacted the Environmental Protection Agency and we've got access to the water and everything's above board and we can take X amounts of litres to do it. And he went, no. He says, the water test to make good whiskey, have you done it? And Andrew went, no, don't know what you're on about. And he went, you're building a £4 or £5 million distillery and you've not even tested the water. Fortune favours the brave, as we say. When we went on Spirit in January 2013, this guy came back. He builds distilleries for a living, employed by Forsyths. And Andrew took him up to the Spirit safe, took out a wee perfect dram glass, put it into the heart of the Spirit. I hope HMRC aren't listening, and gave the guy a little taste. The guy picked up the glass, nosed it, tasted it, eyes went wide, looked around, put the glass down, looked at Andrew, shook his head, picked up the glass again, did exactly the same. And he said, for a person that's not done any testing at all, if the water's going to make great whiskey, I build whiskey distilleries for a living. I've done it for tens of years. This is one of the best new make spirits I've ever tasted. Now, for plaudits and for pride, you know, you can imagine Andrew's chest just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and his head would probably get slightly bigger as well. And he wouldn't mind me saying that as well. But to get that accolade, to get that praise from somebody in the industry that's been doing, it's ingrained in his being that he's creating whiskey distilleries. And for them to say that this is one of the best new make spirits that he's ever tasted. He might say that to everybody, but I think he was totally honest and he was blown away with the fact of what we did. Sorry, I went off on a wee tangent there. I'm conscious of time.
Far from the first.
You get.
You're far from the first or only person in whiskey who has the ability to talk. So we're good. As long as it's engaging, we're good. I just wanted to say, like, for me, I love going back to this this 458 expression. It's fruitier, it's light, it's very fresh. That minerality is still there, the barley's still there. I really like this release. James?
Yeah, I'll echo that. This 458, I absolutely loved like taking a sample of this and going around to stores across Canada because it's exciting. It doesn't maybe have like the showcase for the Wolfburn spirit the way some of the core expressions do, but the smoke and the cask influence, it just comes together. It's just got a lot to love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, lots of fruit, really fresh.
it just adds, again, different sherry maturations add different flavors and tastes. This is a wee bit sweeter than the Oloroso that we're going to be tasting probably the next with a cask sample, which is something really brilliant. We shipped that out to Canada a number of years ago. So you're getting something that I've not tasted personally. So I'm just going to sit back and let you guys introduce the next dram, and I'm just going to watch your beautiful presentation skills. Go for it,
James. I mean, gentlemen's don't tell tales out of school, famously. Yeah, this is kind of an interesting addition to the lineup, and I'm going to have to let you take the lead on this because you know more about this than I do.
Sure. So yeah, we're trying to include Wolfburn for the first time in the Victoria Whiskey Festival. I think it might have been the year right before the pandemic, I believe. So it would have been the 2020 festival that I presented this. And we just were trying to look for a few kind of extra little treats. So actually, two of the things that were sent over, there was kind of a kit there was a bunch of surprises, and one of them was this cask sample. And there was a full container of new make too, which I almost sent you too, Andrew. It's still sitting in my desk actually. And we actually, at the masterclass, we ended up finding kind of different bottling dates of some of the spirits where you could actually kind of watch it go through. But yeah, I believe this was something, Mark, I think that you selected, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, we wanted, again, it's the same old story. You want to showcase your best to capture the audience. And that's not to say that you're doing anything underhand. But yeah, the sherry hogsheads, 250 litres, the maturation, again, being smaller than a butt, faster maturation, more intense, and more of that sherry profile. And for Oloroso sherry casks, and what we use for the Aurora, what we've used for the 10-year-old. So this was an ideal opportunity to give you some. And with the new make spirit as well, you know, when you taste that, and even when you're tasting whiskey, you know, sometimes pour a wee drop in your hand and rub the alcohol away, and then just put your snout in your cupped hand and just shut your eyes, and you can picture yourself at the distillery, or picture yourself in the warehouse. It's got that, again, that's another way to enjoy that whiskey. Or if it spills, you know, it's great on the beard, I must admit, you know, it's like that. You stick it on the beard, and then that lovely sort of whiskey aroma permeates throughout the day. I've yet to sort of create my own sort of beard and mustache wax with whiskey. I'm sure there's something out there, but that's maybe the Wolfburn wax. I don't know. We'll wait and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, sherry, hogshead, cask 133, I think it was, and it's something quite unique. It's something that tastings very rarely get, is access to something that's never been released as well. I'm not sure if that cask has been used yet. I'm not sure if we've disgorged it or we've vatted it with anything else. I can certainly find out. But I did a tasting, and I'll maybe show you pictures, as I say, at the end of it, and I'll maybe discuss other things. So with that, is everybody happy so far? Is everybody having fun? Whiskey is the universal language. The eyes go wide, the smiles. You become childlike. You can, you know, if you weren't on mute, I could probably hear the ooh, ah, ee, ah, all the little excitements when you're drinking whiskey, or you're nudging each other on the couch because you're enjoying it. And that's the sort of the language of whiskey. You don't need to speak. You just need to watch folk enjoying it. It's like our senses betray our sort of bodies, and we give out those. We give out the love without realizing it as well.
Why don't we let's move on to the 7-year, the peated cask strength, and then what we'll do is we'll let you show your photos while we let people vote on their favorites, if that works for you. That's
great. So yeah, the last dram of the evening. Good Lord, where's the evening gone? 2:20. This is, we usually do like a Father's Day expression, actually. The cask strength usually came out for Father's Day. These are Oloroso sherry casks, like the 458. Now, I think this is this 58.2 or is this 56? What's the 58.2 it is? Yeah, so this is a combination of Oloroso sherry casks and bourbon casks with a lightly peated spirit as well. Why it's the last one, it's more of a hard hitter. The peat, that's not because the peat's increasing, but as the years increase and the maturity increases as well, this will give you an idea of the profile that we're doing. The reason that the 10-year-old we're not finishing on the 10-year-old is I wanted the 10-year-old as part of the core range, the first 5 that we had as well. Oloroso, again, beautiful dry nutty spiciness. You know, I always go back and say that because that's the taste and flavour I get from it. This has got a beautiful like a treacle flavour to it as well, like that black treacle that I get, that I used to be able to go into the tin with a small spoon when my mum was cooking and put like a wee dod on the end of the spoon and just sit there on the bunker watching my mum cook, and just, again, iconic images of my childhood, or iconic images of taste and flavour. This at 58.2, it's our highest strength, so yeah, it's a good way to finish. And it's a good way to say that we do cask strengths limited usually to about 2,000 every year. And because it's sometimes with the Father's Day tag, my dad unfortunately died in 2013 before Wolfburn came out. So my dad would be super proud of what I'm doing on a global stage. I usually get quite emotional speaking about this, but I'm quite stoic today. I'm getting through it. And I usually take the neck. I usually take the first dram of our cask strength in a glass, and I raise it to my father as well, because he liked a dram. He would be super proud of what I do for the brand. And hopefully your experience today has whetted your appetite. I'll probably say at this point, when you're drinking the last one, it's a great opportunity for me to say thank you. Yes, I'm going to show you some pictures for the last sort of 5 minutes, quickly just going through. But on behalf of Harry and Andrew, Charlotte and Paul, Dave and Daniel, Ian and Innes, Nick and Nicola, Jem and Gemma, Wilma and Charlie, Max and Matthew, Sean and myself, the entire Wolfburn company. That is everybody in the company, from owners, accountant, brand manager, production, to me, lower than a snake's belly in a wagon rut. I get the best job. I get to present, I get to see the joy and delight on people's faces. I get to get the liquid to the lips. It's been an absolute pleasure to present tonight. And just as you're discussing maybe the last one and voting for the last one, I'll quickly just pop up now.
While you're looking for that, Mark, James, what are your thoughts on the last one here?
Yeah, perfect kind of ending to this lineup. I feel like this is just another like totally different angle than we've seen in the earlier drams, which is great. Yeah, I like this style. I think this works for me. It's assertive. It's got real character. It's got punch, but it's still, you still get that Wolfburn character like hiding underneath a little bit, which is fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to me, very fruity. Possibly one of the fruitiest whiskeys in tonight's lineup, and that smoke and the malt and that minerality carrying through it, kind of a nice nod back. And normally we'll go through and do what we call our speed round, but it's interesting going back to just that first one, the Northland. I get notes of peanut on there, or like shelled peanuts, which is perfect because we're talking presumably ex-Laphroaig quarter casks having some sort of imprint in there. And who is Laphroaig a part of? The Beam Group. Jim Beam barrels almost always have that kind of peanutty note coming through them. So there's some really expressive whiskeys in the range tonight. I think, it's funny. I like kind of the ends of the lineup better than the middle. But like you were saying before, Mark, you're looking for someone to find something that they like somewhere within the range. And
Yeah,
I think there's a lot of points here where people could find something to like.
brilliant. And yeah, some of the the pictures out the back, you see the tree line just out the back of the roller doors, which we can open as well.
Mark, I don't think we can see your screen quite. We see a big white screen that says Zoom.
Oh, nightmare. Oh, why is this then? I thought I was sharing my screen.
You're not, are you using two screens by chance?
No, I'm not. Let me just.
While that's happening, while Mark's looking for that, why don't I fire up the poll so people can start on that, so maybe they can concentrate on your images when they're good to go. James, I'm going to ask you, and Harmony will ask you virtually for your picks, your two favorites. But James, if you were to wander back through this whole range tonight, granted there are 8 of them, are there a couple that stood out for you?
Yeah, definitely. I find that I didn't really have a preconceived notion coming into this of where kind of my opinion would land, and recency bias. The 458 I've had access to a lot lately because I've been selling it, but yeah, I kind of feel like the Northland and the Morven in particular. Morven would be number 1 for me. Yeah, I feel like it shows the distillery character maybe the most for me, and that's that's what makes me excited about Wolfburn. So that would be my number 1, and then Northland number 2.
You know what? I think we're in tandem tonight. If I was to give an honorable mention, I think it would go to that peated cask strength, the 7-year-old. But I agree. The Morven, I think it showed really well. I like the Langskip too. I love that like concentration of the fruit and the bourbon notes and the malt. But yeah, it's an interesting tasting where my favorites are 2 of the more mainstream bottlings within a range, but I think they're very well done.
Quick question: are you seeing anything on your screen?
We can see a cask with some tools on it.
Oh, brilliant! This is our first very cask number 1, 2013. Just here, just above where the tools are as well. Yeah, there are stills. 5,500, 3,800, and a beautiful bulbous onion here for extra copper contact. Again, line arms slightly down, condensers. Everything's steam driven. Everything's done by hand. The inspection hatches, everybody has to watch if you're the stillman on the day. The great thing about our distillery, although it's modern day efficient, everything's done by hand, so it's like watching everything. It's really great. Fortune favours the brave above our Caperdonic washbacks. Our washbacks are 9,500 litres. These are 57,000 litres. These are ex sort of Glen Grant 2 Forsyths in Rothes. That was the manufacturing site, and that was the old site of the Caperdonic distillery. So when you're building a new distillery, you really want to put something from an old distillery in it, just as a wee nod to the previous craftspeople of the era. One's our fresh water tank, our spring water tank that we draw in for the Wolfburn, and one's our effluent tank. We try not to get them mixed up for obvious reasons. Just on the tree line at the back, that's where the Wolfburn is. That's where we draw the water from. These are our stills, freshly lacquered actually. So we like to keep our distillery in, again, shipshape, Bristol fashion. Everything has its place, run like a military operation. Traditional dunnage warehouses. I showed this picture at a tasting, and then I got an email from somebody and said, where's cask number 480? They had gone into the minutiae, they had gone into looking at the casks, and I actually got back to them within probably an hour. I managed to find that cask 480 was used as a single cask expression for the Asian market as well. So it's really nice. That's a view from above the distillery, looking out over at the Scrabster, where you get the ferry to Orkney, if you want to go up and see Highland Park or Scapa. That's our distillery, and just at the back of the distillery, down the bottom left, that's where the Wolfburn comes in. So again, it's an industrial unit. We don't have the fancy pagodas, the millstones, the burn flowing at the front or the back of the distillery for everybody to see. It's a functional piece of equipment. At the top, we've extended warehouses number 1 and 2. Every money that we get, we don't have a fancy visitor centre, we don't have a restaurant, we don't have a coffee shop. Every penny that comes back to the distillery is investing in machinery as well. We've cleared another space at the top of the distillery for our warehouses number 4 and 5. So that's us actually used all the site now for warehouses. We do have neighbours that have offered us space, so watch this space. Building warehouses, if you pardon the pun, the costs are through the roof, but it means that we can mature everything on site and have supreme control over our spirit. That's warehouse number 5 getting built this year. And just to give you a sort of scale and size as well. Aurora Borealis, the Northern Lights, that's just an absolute cracking pick. Seeing from the Caithness coast, apologies. And that's Morven, the highest peak in Caithness. And Morven is the snow as well, just to give you something different. This little hill is called the Maiden's Pap for obvious reasons.
It's I'm not sure the word pap is as well known in Canada as in Scotland, but roughly translated, it's breast for those who are wondering.
And that's a big bold chap down at Thurso Beach. This is the history of 4-footed beasts and serpents. I've been lucky enough to see the original book in Scotland's oldest lending library. The original book, and that's a different picture, is from 1555. So this book, oops, that book's from the 16th century, but there's an older picture as well. We do have some royal visitors. This was 2019. Prince Charles, as he was then, came to visit the distillery. The north of Scotland, the Castle of May, the Queen Mother's residence, the royals have always visited the north of Scotland. He spent too much time at our distillery. I got speaking to his personal protection crew, ex-cops, me being, so there was an affinity there, and they were saying, can we get him out? He's spending too much time, he's drinking too much whiskey, we've got other arrangements and functions to do, but he's having such a great time. The Duke of Rothesay did his own bottle at Wolfburn. This is our sort of old bottling system that we did in 2019. We have an up-to-date bottling system now, which is far better, a bit less labour intensive. But this was a commemorative bottle for the Duke of Rothesay, now King Charles. Just on that, we were doing the lineup, and he came along the line, and he came to me and his butler, his equerry, said, "Oh, this is Mark, he's the global brand ambassador." And he went, "Oh, hello, Mark. Yeah, you must do as much travelling as me." And at that point, I said, "Well, I think you'll have more air miles than me, sir." And he took a step towards me, and I thought I had offended him. He's a big lad as well. And he looked at me and he says, "Oh, I do love a man who still waxes his moustache." So I said, "Well, with royal approval, sir, I shall continue to do that." So my Wolfburn whiskers, my tash is still waxed because Prince Charles likes it, and I like it as well. This is just the Kilverstone and Stockholm Museum here. This is just a series that we do. We were asked in 2016 to do a special bottling for the Caithness Viking Festival. We were only just out on the market. And rather than just give them a bottling, it was a statement of intent. We said, we're going to do one, but we're going to do it. We're going to call it the Kilver series, and we're going to do 24 in the series. Last week, we released Kilver number 12. And that just shows you the passion and the foresight and the intent that the distillery had. That's just the rune symbols on a burial stone. That's what that was. I'm boring you now. I'm boring you. These are just different expressions that we've done over the years for Kilver. And we've done some charity bottles. Our owners are ex-military men, obviously, so we've supported military charities like the Poppy Appeal, Help for Heroes, the Ukraine Appeal, the Humanitarian Appeal. And that's some of the distillery staff at the Help for Heroes release in 2019. We've raised £25,000 for the Ukrainian Appeal. I always like to put that in. That's just 3 generations of the Westmorland family, my mum and my daughter outside the distillery. That's just a feel-good factor. Yes, we do some private cask bottlings at Wolfburn, but we don't sell for any independent blends. We don't sell for any independent bottles either. If you want a bottle of Wolfburn, you come to us. If you don't, you can trot on. If you're a hardcore fan, get the Wolfburn tattoo. I've had various discussions with people that want the high resolution images of the sea wolf, and some people go the extra mile. We're getting rooms, and this was a coverall as well. This guy,
I want to see a sea wolf Victoria Whiskey Festival.
It's brilliant. And these 2 of our biggest fans at one of our, that's Rob and his friend. I just saw Rob again just last weekend in the Netherlands. I'm 6 foot and these guys are absolute giants. And that's Thurso Square on a beautiful summer's day. That's a beautiful slide to look at and end. St. Peter's Church at the cross at Thurso as well. So yeah, I thought I would show you some pictures. It's fast and furious and there any money around here. You've had some great drams. You've had some beautiful chat from everybody. And I'm interested with the polls. What won?
Well, if you haven't voted yet, you've got about 30 seconds to quickly go in and vote. So please do so if you haven't. I see 11 of you have voted so far. James and I don't get a vote, although we've already declared our preferences. So we're going to give it 10 seconds now to finish, or we're going to call it. That's 5, 4.
I'll go the Northland.
Yeah. All right, here we go. James, I thought you were drinking from a giant bottle of wine there for a moment. And I was going to be like, wow, that's impressive.
I was just picturing that, Mark, the guy standing beside you there, drinking like with the bottle of wine, looking like a little can in his hand.
Crazy.
Yeah. Mark, I also am 6 foot-ish, maybe 6'2". And the fact that those guys made you look small is shocking. There's not many times in my life where I've stood next to people that have made me feel small. So
yeah,
I get where you're at there. So here we go. First favorite, the Langskip. And it looks like tied with the Peated Cask Strength, which is interesting for first favorite, and some other votes to be had there too. And for second favorite, there's a lot of votes all over the place, but the Wolfburn Lightly Peated Batch 458 is the clear favorite for second favorite whiskey. Mark, I'm just curious if you have any tidbits or nuggets for us of things we can expect in the next year or so from Wolfburn.
Yeah, like any distillery, we like to squirrel casks away. We've got plans for a 12. We'll have plans for possibly a 15, an 18. We've got to do that as a distillery. Our new small match came out, batch 177, as I say, Caribbean rum casks, full 7 years maturation. We've added some bourbon casks. That's just out. I'm not sure if that's coming your way.
It is.
It is, oh, even better. We did a coronation bottle, which entered into the Canadian market for the King, which contains bourbon aged whiskey, very, very similar to the Langskip, but you might get some of that peated casks that we mistakenly done. So that's a wee nod to you. I can't reveal anything. I don't have a special nugget for a grand reveal on a tasting, but what I'll say is, you know, the Wolfburn journey, I describe it as like a still pond. And all I'm asking folk to do is when you drop the stone in the middle and you watch the ripples go out to the further extremities, you know, just bang the drum for Wolfburn, spread the love if you can. Hopefully tonight we've made a memory. It's been a quick sort of hour and 45 minutes, as I say. But it's, you get me the same way, whether it's on Zoom or whether it's face-to-face or whether it's email communication. I'm passionate about the distillery. We're motivated to create the best whiskey that we can. And hopefully tonight you've enjoyed yourself and you've came to the brand, and hopefully we'll get our Wolfburn claws in you. We'll get our sea wolf claws in you, and we'll drag you as we get bigger and better. We'll drag you with us on our adventure as well.
Very good. Well, listen, Mark, we know it's very early where you are / late. So big thank you again to staying up late with us tonight. James, big thank you to you and to Authentic Wine and Spirits, as always, for the time and support you guys put into events like this. I want to thank everybody for taking part in tonight's tasting. I hope you genuinely enjoyed it. If you didn't catch your email today, if you bought a set of samples for the archives tasting, it's been postponed. I think we've got a new date. I think it's November 24th for that one, and apologies for that. But thank you very much, everybody, for taking part tonight. I sincerely hope you enjoyed the tasting. And if you did, please support Wolfburn by maybe buying a bottle of your favorite whiskey at some point. We look forward to seeing this brand as it grows in the future. So thank you, Mark. Thank you, James. Thank you, everybody. I hope you have a great night, and we'll talk again soon.
Cheers, guys. Thanks very much.
Cheers.
Ange.